Welcome, everyone, to the first official private screening of the Tower.
And I'm Sarah Robinson from the class of 1997.
Today is a great day for all our fellow Harbor alums and their family, friends from all over the country. Thank you for being a part of this evening. It's so great to connect with everyone for this important moment celebrating Harbor history.
We'll begin with a few special announcements, and then we'll get right to our first guest, the filmmaker Rick Shadowlawn. After we chat with him, we'll all watch The Tower together. It runs about 45-50 minutes, and afterwards we'll be joined by a great group. Longtime teacher, Mr. Joe Robinson, current Newport Harbor principal, Dr. Sean Bolton, and one of the alumni stars in the film, Bob Rogers from the class of 1968.
If you have questions for Rick or any of our other guests, drop them in the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom screen now. Please include your class year or Harbor affiliation if you have one, as we'd love to hear who is watching with us today. And maybe we'll even give you a shout out so your friends know you're here.
If you're a fellow alumni and haven't taken the time to sign up with us, please head over to our website, newportharboralumni.org. You can find links to it in the chat so we can stay in touch. And if you're just from the community, welcome. We'd like to introduce ourselves.
The Newport Harbor Alumni Association was founded in 1933 with the mission to preserve the past and enrich the future. Today's event honors both parts of that goal as we celebrate the 90 years of sailor history and work to support our scholarships for worthy graduating seniors.
The proceeds from today will help sustain our scholarship program, which prioritizes students continuing their education at a trade, technical, and nursing school or community college. It began 5 years ago with $2,000 awards. Because of your generosity, just this past week on Thursday, we were able to give out 8 $2,000 gifts to the class of 2021.
And now we'll introduce to you our new 2021 scholarship recipients: Alina Aviles, Shaylee Cienfuegos, Yahir Gonzalez, Ashley Gonzalez Flores, Kendall Kelly, Miles Marquez, Gustavo Navarro, and Nancy Velasco. Let's give them a round of applause.
Yay! We're very proud of the way they've succeeded during these really difficult times, and we look forward to seeing the impact they make on the world. After this past year, we know we'll continue to see really great need. So if you have $5, $50, or $500 to support this important cause, we and the Newport Harbor students would be very appreciative.
Thanks to everyone who has contributed so far. If you haven't had a chance to donate, click the link in the chat or go to newportharboralumni.org and hit the red donate button. We truly are grateful for every gift as we continue the long sailor tradition of giving back.
Okay, now for a really big announcement.
Drum roll, please.
We're having an in-person 90th birthday celebration for Newport Harbor this fall. Our school was founded in 1930, so this past school year has been her 90th birthday. We had to put off our plans to celebrate this milestone, but now we can share with you that the Newport Harbor High School Homecoming 90th +1 birthday bash will happen this coming October 15th through 17th on campus at our alma mater.
It's going to be an all-inclusive, family-friendly weekend with lots of events to choose from. On Friday, October 15th, we'll start off with the homecoming varsity football game. We'll have a tailgate dinner on campus and an alumni section to sit together and enjoy the game.
Then on Saturday, October 16th, we'll get to some more great stuff. We'll have a campus open house starting at noon. There'll be food trucks, campus tours, your favorite teachers and old friends, live music, and a showing of this documentary in the Harbor Theater.
And that's not all. Saturday night, we will have a special Tarzan Stars concert event starring the band Honk.
Everyone watching today is hearing about this first. Tonight, actually right now, the page to buy tickets for Honk is on our website. If you go to newportharboralumni.org and follow the link from the homepage. Everyone watching right now has about 2 days to get their tickets before anyone else. Later this week, we're going to be sending out an email and social media blast to all of our alumni and friends. So make sure you go to your website at newportharboralumni.org and get the best seats in the house before everyone else does.
It's going to be great. You won't want to miss it. So save the date.
Now we'd like to welcome our filmmaker, Rick Shadowlawn, from the class of 1970. What you'll see today is the result of hundreds of hours of his work. So we're thrilled to have him join us. If you have any questions for him, drop them in the chat. If you want just Riley and I to see the questions, when you put it in the chat, have the two go to panelists. If you want everyone in the audience to be able to see your question, make sure you hit the drop down for panelists and attendees so everyone can see that you're here.
Everybody, please welcome Rick Shadowlawn.
Yay! Thank you, Rick. It's good to see you.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you, Sarah and Riley, for hosting this and taking care of all these tough questions.
Hopefully they're not too tough here.
You're getting it.
So we don't want to give away any spoilers, but talk a little bit about how this film came together.
Well, it started with a couple classmates talking to me after I finished a documentary and told me, they suggested I do a documentary on Harbor High. And I thought, what could you possibly do for a high school? Everybody knows everything already. And as they explained Heritage Hall and all the history, I became more and more interested in it. And then Sarah and Corinne and I went out on the road and started interviewing just the most fabulous, accomplished, amazing people. And from then on, I was just hooked with the whole process. And then digging through a Heritage Hall with thousands and thousands of boxes and documents and pictures, and it was just incredible. So I was truly hooked on the whole process.
So Rick, what are some of your favorite moments from making the film?
Probably the most is just digging through Heritage Hall and going through the past history and comparing how it was then to now. And it was that, and just meeting the amazing people. All the interviewees were fabulous. They had incredible stories. And Corinne and Sarah and I would get in the car, we'd drive off, and we couldn't stop talking. We were, what are we going to? Every answer was perfect. It was this. How are we going to cut this up? And so it was really fascinating to hear their stories and just compare them to today.
Yeah. Rick, I love how you gave a shout out to our Heritage Hall Museum. If anyone watching out there isn't familiar with it, we're really lucky at Newport Harbor that we have a museum dedicated to the history of our school. Not many high schools create a space for that. It was started a number of years ago, I think around 1980, by a beloved math teacher, Webb Jones, and he really stewarded the history of the school. And when he passed away, we named a museum in his honor. So we're really lucky to have it, that museum on campus. And it really is a treasure trove of trophies and photos and old galleons and Beacon newspapers and pictures and all kinds of awesome stuff. So I think that's really, thanks for pointing that out, Rick, because it's a really cool place. And if you haven't checked it out yet, I hope, next fall, you'll be able to get a chance to walk through there.
Definitely recommend it. It's really cool. I was shocked when I got to see it. But another question for you, Rick. Now, the name of the film stands out as a significant nod to the most relatable monument at our high school. Why did you choose to call it the Tower?
Well, I think the Tower, it has something special for everybody. Obviously, when you're a young student and you walk onto the campus, you see this enormous tower, and you've probably seen other high schools. No other high school that I know of has a tower like that distinct, and it just has a mystique about it. It's once you get into school as a freshman, you start hearing stories, and older students start pulling pranks about going up in an elevator, and you come to find that there isn't an elevator, and it's just without giving it away, it just, the mystique about it is something special, and plus it's it's this centerpiece. It's the beacon of hope for Newport and the students, and the beacon of knowledge, so to speak, for the kids that go to campus there. And it's just, you almost have to go there to believe it.
No, for sure. It really is, you can really see it from so many different places in Newport. And I think it really just, it stands up there. I remember when we were first sharing about this, someone said on our social media, JD Young just said the tower is a navigation point when coming back from Catalina. All of our sailors know just what he's talking about. It's really such a beautiful monument. When I was a little kid, I used to think it was a castle because it's this beautiful, tall tower building. It seemed like a castle to me when I was little. Andrea is saying the haunted tower. Yep. I was a gullible freshman. So I think probably a few people fell for an elevator ticket or being afraid of the ghosts that are up there. If that was you're in very good company. So Rick, another question for you is you interviewed Harbor grads. I think the earliest grad you interviewed for this film was from 1942, all the way up to the class of 2021. What's something that all of those people had in common?
Well, I think whether it be then or now, they all realized then for sure that it was a special school. When they left Harbor, they realized how it was really special. And, they all developed friends then, and they probably still have those friends today. So that whole process makes Harbor High just something in the kids' lives that once they leave high school, they didn't realize it then, but they do now, how special Harbor High was for their careers and their personalities. And it's just it was a great starting point for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I was very lucky to join you on some of those interviews at the beginning of this project. And I can remember, again, not too many spoilers, talking to A.G. Kawamura. And he and I grew up in the sort of the same neighborhood right by the high school, a number of decades apart from each other, but we had sort of like similar stories and similar memories. And I think that's a special thing about, this area and this place.
Yeah. And they all definitely had teachers that affected their lives, and most of them in a positive way. And like I say, they didn't realize it then, but they do now. And it's just something that's pretty special to think back that it's not your parent, it might not be your parents that were just a teacher. You left and you couldn't stop thinking about all the things he told you. So it contributed to your life from then on.
Do you have any favorite teachers that you can think of you want to give a shout out to now?
Well, Bob Haley saved my life. So he was a fabulous teacher. He was my track coach and a biology teacher. And I did have Fry for a while. And I think Bob Haley thought I'd be more valuable in his class. So somehow I ended up there.
Yeah, Bob Haley was also my biology teacher, probably towards the end of his teaching career. And he's one of those greats of Newport Harbor High School, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't have Wentz, but, after all the comments about Wentz, I think I missed something, a big part of Harbor High.
So Sean McGee is asking, he's from the class of 2004. He says, after you doing this film, Rick, do you have any opinion on what decade or graduating class might be the best? That might be some fighting words out there. Personally, I think the class of 1997 is the best, but.
Well, I think in 1970, we had more fun than anybody. We just did. And things are a little different now, but the 60s and 70s, I think, were the golden years. But now with all the academics and all the great accomplishments that Harbor is running up, it's be hard to argue with the later years.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff happening on campus now, and it comes from the foundation that all those earlier years and decades. Oh, someone just said, no, the class of 1959 is the best. That was Here's another Bruce Charles, Billings and Charles saying class of 1970. I got Robin Sinclair says 1974 for sure. It seems like a little partisan. Monica Medeta saying the 80s. So I feel like people are definitely thinking that their year is the best year. Okay, Patsy Ober saying, come on guys, class of 67. It's getting very spicy in the comments right now. So
it looks like there was a lot of good years for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I'm very familiar with a lot of those names that just popped up, and they were all classmates. Patsy was a little earlier than I was, but I know her pretty well. And like I say, I think 60s and 70s rock.
Okay, you might have a slightly, personally influenced opinion on that, but I'll allow it. I'll allow it.
So, Rick, before we go, where can we see your other film, Living It Forever, about surfing in Newport in the 50s and 60s?
Well, you can go on the surfnetwork.com, and that's the largest surf network in the world. And you can either rent it or purchase it there. And then it's, Amazon has it, Living It Forever. And so that would be it.
If you haven't checked it out, that's Rick's other documentary. It features a lot of amazing footage of surfing in Newport in the 50s and early 60s, so a lot of great interviews. If you're a surfer, if you're a Newport Beach lover, it's a great one to check out for sure. Rick, thank you so much for your work on this film. And also a big thanks to Corinne Hamilton Heiser, class of 1970, Greg Kelly, class of 1975, and the many, many people who contributed their time, memories, and creativity to make the tower a reality.
Thank you for having me, and hope you guys enjoy it.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay, thank you.
So, here we go. We'd love to see how you're watching with us today. So take a picture, share on social media, and please tag us. We're at Newport Harbor Alumni on Facebook and Instagram, and follow us while you're at it.
So we're going to get some more shout outs from the comments. We love to hear how you're watching. John Fuller from the class of 77 says hello. There was a mother and son watching together. I see hello from Shirley Bergeron Opp and her son, Gary Opp. That's fun to see a whole family watching together. I got a hi, Rick, you rock shout out there for Rick. Grant McCormick from the class of 1968, casting another vote for Mr. Bob Wentz as a very awesome teacher. Let me see who else is here. Kelly McCormick Mange from the class of 73 saying hello. My babysitter from when she was a high school student at Harbor, Krista Haskell, is saying hello along with all of her family, the Haskells. So hi, Haskell family.
and look, Sean McGuy and his wife and 3 kids are all watching from Toronto, Canada.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. So we've got an international audience here today. We have Sunny Stallman Whedon from the class of 1964. And let's see, there's Rick Morton from the class of 1959, Todd Hess from 64. Some shout outs to some really great teachers here from Tom Myers, Scott Dukes, Jeff Perosi, Mr. Wright, Gail Horowitz, Coach Barnett, and Dudley Smith. Those are some very well-known and well-beloved names. Here's from Ken Byrne from the class of 76. He's saying Joe Robinson, John McGinnis, Fabian Giroux, and Don Eulander. Too many to count. I mean, we're really lucky to have so many wonderful teachers out there. So, from our Robin Sinclair is saying that she and the Gaddis, Patetti, and Ferraro families, they're all on the same block. They're having a blast out there watching us tonight. Dennis O'Hearn is here. Mr. Dennis O'Hearn, beloved history teacher for many people. Hi, Mr. O'Hearn. He was my AP American history teacher. So I'm so glad that you could join us. We're going to be doing some more shout outs later on. So please keep them coming in the comments. Remember, if you want just Riley and I to see your comments or your questions or your shout out, when it says for to, the comment is just say to the panelists. If you want everybody to be able to see you say hi, make sure you hit the drop down button so it says all panelists and attendees.
And there's still time for your friends to join the fun. Let them know. Social media shout out. They can still get the Zoom link by signing up on our website, newportharboralumni.org, anytime during the show. Also, don't forget to put your questions in the chat, in the Q&A, so we can get to those after the film. We'll be taking notes on the best questions to ask. And now, without further ado, sit back, relax, and let's all enjoy The Tower.
Herbert Hoover was President of the United States. He'd been in office for 8 months when the American dream turned into a nightmare. In the fall of 1929, share prices on the New York Stock Exchange collapsed. Wall Street crashed, and America plunged into a deep economic depression, the worst financial downturn in U.S. history. It took tremendous faith in the future for a small community to invest in a high school that would prepare young people for jobs that did not exist. In the early 30s, Newport Beach was a sleepy town on the California coast with 2,000 year-round residents. It was a water sports paradise. On weekends, holidays, and summertime, the population swelled with the arrival of thousands of visitors who lived in Los Angeles. Many rode the red cars from downtown LA to the Balboa Pavilion for a pleasant day by the ocean. Millionaires came to visit their yachts and race their sailboats. Newport was raw and largely undeveloped. It was basically a working wharf with a fishing fleet and a small commercial port. There was no high school. To receive a high school education, locals had to travel on dirt roads to a school in Santa Ana. To help their community grow, the residents of Newport Beach, Corona del Mar, and Costa Mesa petitioned for a high school. Leading the charge was Judge Donald Dodge and the man who established the Balboa Island Ferry, Joseph Beek. After a state bill and a local election, the new school district bought 20 acres of barley, lima bean, and sweet potato fields in Newport Beach for $14,000. And ground was broken on June 14, 1930. Labor was cheap and plentiful. Construction began immediately. Sidney Davidson was hired as principal. Davidson agreed to work his first 7 months without pay because money was so tight. He selected the original faculty of 12. Ralph Reed was the very first teacher hired. He would serve as teacher, coach, and athletic director. Only 15 weeks after breaking ground, Newport Harbor Union High School opened. Construction wasn't quite finished, but the business of learning beckoned. 178 students walked through the front door on September 22, 1930.
In the fall of 1930, the tower wasn't finished, and the students arrived for their first day of school.
The school's pioneers had big dreams. Construction was completed by the end of 1930, and the building could serve 700 students. The tower stood boldly as a navigation point and beacon of hope. But for how long? Right from the beginning, there were concerns about earthquakes. and soon came the first test. The tower remained secure, at least for now. The first school newspaper was published in 1931, and the first play debuted. That same year, the Girls Athletic Association was formed. Student government, a cheerleading squad, secret societies, and social clubs were established. There were plenty of activities, organizations, and ways to connect. In '35, the senior class bought a painting for the school. Little did they know what their gift would inspire. President Franklin Roosevelt was serving his third term in office when at last, in 1941, the Great Depression was over, only to be followed by another disaster.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
Harbor High answered the patriotic call and raised money for war bonds, an impressive $50,000.
The main event was World War II was going on at the time. I went to Newport Harbor High School from 1938 to 1942. So I went from a one-room schoolhouse with a class of 5 to Newport Harbor High School, and our class was 100.
Dr. Damiana is one of our special graduates and Hall of Fame members. He grew up where Pelican Hill Golf Course sits today. His family farm was there. His dad used to sell peaches and strawberries on Pacific Coast Highway in the 30s and 40s.
I was actually 16 years of age. We were evacuated to Poston, Arizona, war relocation camp.
He did not get to walk, he did not get his yearbook, and he didn't get his varsity letter for playing football.
I started in 1940, graduated in 44. So that was in ancient times. All I remember about high school is exceeding boredom. It was boring as hell. I'm sorry.
Such boredom led to poor conduct and pranks.
The worst I did was perhaps set off a hydrogen sulfide bomb under the teacher's desk. Did sort of stop the class for a day, but aside from that, that was the worst I did.
In the early 40s, bell chimes were added to the tower. The first homecoming dance was held at Santa Ana Country Club. World War II ended in 1945. Hence, there was good reason for dancing and celebration. At Harbor High, another war was in full swing. It was a playful initiation of the freshman students known as War Whoops, a day of light-hearted hazing where the sophomores picked on the freshmen. Boys were commanded to dress up as girls, complete with makeup. Lipstick was a must, only to be smeared by a pie in the face. In the late 40s, the girls' gym was built, as was a snack shop called the Teen Canteen. The swimming pool was added, which would become a hub for future Olympians. Elective classes were offered, such as woodshop, auto mechanics, and home economics.
So people will learn how to be a baker or how to be a woodworker or something, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And this is something we could really use in this country.
For the first 3 years of the decade, America was at war with Korea. General Dwight Eisenhower became president in 1953. The post-World War II economic boom set in. Such a time commenced the golden age for growth and development in Newport Beach. Hoag Hospital opened in '52 with 75 beds and soon expanded. Harbor High was growing. Beak Hall and Dodge Hall were built and dedicated. A long-awaited clock was affixed to the tower and a Home Arts building was added.
The arts are, I think, indispensable parts of becoming an educated human being. We're creatures of feeling. We don't always live in our head. In fact, we live more commonly in our hearts and in our emotions. For the fall of '57, I was a cheerleader. I was invited at the end of that semester to step down for, I guess you would call, conduct unbecoming, because there was a football game. At the end of the game, walking out, I lit a cigar. That example was, of course, quite unbecoming.
It wasn't just smoking. Certain books were taboo.
I came out of my room and was walking down the hall one day toward the bookstore, and there was Joe Hamlet and Danny Gillis outside of the bookstore. And I heard Joe Hamlet saying, "Get that book out of my school." The book was Catcher in the Rye.
There were a lot of things that happened at Newport Harbor in the old days that couldn't happen today. One of the things that used to intrigue me were they were called car rallies. And all the cars would organize in the parking lot, and they'd be given a list of places they have to go and do to certain things. And these kids would take off the parking lot and they'd roar out. And it was fundraising, yet we had a donkey basketball game where it was teachers versus students, and we all playing basketball in the gym, but we all had to ride donkeys. And it was hysterical because, we didn't know how to ride a donkey. There was no saddles. We'd get on, fall off. But it was really fun. There were some fun times when we weren't so worried about breaking rules or being sued. And those are good memories.
A decade of assassinations. In 1960, John F. Kennedy was elected President of the United States. He was assassinated 3 years later. Civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated on April 4, 1968. 2 months later, Senator Robert Kennedy was also assassinated.
At the time, he was on track to be the nominee at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, and probably our next president. But then, just a year after that, America landed on the moon, a real feel-good moment.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Back on Earth in Newport Beach, Fashion Island Shopping Center was developed. Bow Week on the peninsula became a spring break tradition where high school and college students came from all over to party in the streets and shout from the rooftops. Harbor High saw the end of the girls' dress code. Navy blue skirts, dropping past the knees, were out. In '67, boys tennis won their first CIF championship. Governor Ronald Reagan addressed Harbor High's student body at a time when politics were tense, as the decade was dominated by the Vietnam War.
The Vietnam War has to be number one because I had friends killed there, and some of my friends' older brothers were killed there, and since then I visited the wall and seen their names and shown my own children that.
I'll never forget the name, Green and Panther. You paid $400, and they had a list of sympathetic doctors and all of that. They were both Vietnam vets and were sympathetic with everybody that didn't want to go. At that point in time, it was like, why? The entire country was going, why are we there? Oh, it was just horrible.
Hair length became a political statement instead of just a fashion statement. Long hair became associated with hippies, and drugs and war protests. To my generation, long hair was a statement of positive values.
I think we all were like profoundly influenced by the hippie thing, you know, and then certainly English rock, you know, bands like Cream and Jimi Hendrix Experience, and as well as the Beatles. My God, I mean, it changed the world. That period of time was this huge awakening, I think, for the entire world, really.
It seems like every decade brings a mixture of challenge and hope, serious fear, and some lighthearted mischief.
I went up the bell tower and we got caught by the principal, red-handed in this place with all these weird inscriptions all over the walls and such.
You know, we would go up into the tower all the time. My name and some saying that I wrote is up in there. Everyone wrote inside the bell tower on the wall. So you'd see notes from someone 20 years before. Class of 52. You know, the school goes back to the 30s.
In the 30s, there was no water polo at Harbor High, but that would change. One man, Coach Barnett, came to Harbor in 1966 and built a dynasty. In '67, his team won their first of many CIF championships.
The legend himself is Bill Barnett. He did put high school water polo on the map. He made it significant. He built the pool here. He coached the Olympic team in '84 and in 1988.
And I've taught here and coached here for 49 years. And I started in 1966 and I finished teaching in 2007.
It's Bill Barnett, who made me a man. It was never a love affair. I mean, he never loved me and I tolerated him. But what I wanted from him was his respect, because I knew that it was earned. If you were sick, you went and sat in the stands. I mean, whatever it was, there was no getting out of anything.
Well, I mean, if you're going to accomplish anything, you have to put in the time, period. I mean, good things don't come without hard work. And that's what I constantly emphasize to all the players on my team.
You bore some scars along the way, but it paid off. I mean, you really learn from him that hard work and true dedication will take you to the top.
Barnett was exceedingly hard on people, but on the other hand, it was turning kids into Olympic champions. And he did that year after year for 49 years.
One thing that really makes me feel good is that these kids come back and they tell you how much you've meant to them.
I had not seen him in about 20 years, and when I approached him at a water polo tournament, he recognized me at a distance, but before I could say anything, the very first words out of his mouth after 20 years was, "Rogers, you got fat."
The community rallied around Harbor High athletes. Game day was a big deal. Led by the pep squad, fans enthusiastically cheered on their sailors.
We love the cheerleaders at Newport. Were very important because they really were the spirit of the school.
There were pep rallies, which are usually in the auditorium. There were wonderful football games in black and white film. You had elections, which were always a lot of fun, a lot of camaraderie, and you had cliques. The surfers would hang out one place. You had the jocks too, basically the football playing jocks who were one type, and then you had the swimmers and the water polo playing people who were kind of a little bit more clean cut. And then of course the girls had all these social clubs, which were trendy, and then the boys started their social clubs, which were kind of a little bit of a drinking club. So there were the Nobles and the Gargoyles and the Rebels. Unlike a lot of people who find looking back at high school sort of tough, and those are really charming and emotionally significant years for me.
Residential communities, shopping, and business centers continued to develop in Newport Beach. On New Year's Day in 1972, Harbor High's band marched in Pasadena's legendary Rose Parade. In '73, the Vietnam War ended. A year later, President Richard Nixon resigned from office due to the Watergate scandal.
We were in the middle of Watergate about that time, and so there was a lot of things going on around the world and around the country, and yet, as many people would probably recognize, Newport was fairly insulated from a lot of it.
I remember waiting to have the Daily Pilot. I knew what time it was delivered at 3:15, and I got it, went out and read it every single day, the Daily Pilot. And that was our source of news, which is completely terrifying.
There was chaos in the streets, and national politics were in turmoil. But Harbor High's student government and service organizations carried on with civility. A healthy number of students volunteered at Hoag Hospital. They were known as candy stripers.
A high school needs to be a very important part of its community, and trying to make that happen so that you get a sense that kids know that they want to give back.
We would not be a real school, and we would not feel like a family without the community support. So it's definitely important for all of us to give back to our community.
A lot of students do volunteer within the community. I was a part of ASB, which is the student government on campus, and they prepared us for the world by teaching us valuable leadership skills.
I think what's important about student government is that it's the first steps of responsibility, and it's the first steps of being able to not only speak one's own mind, but to speak on behalf of people who maybe don't have a voice.
I mean, it was the 70s. It was like disco. We were having, it was a very different time. But I do remember vividly the whole grad night at Disneyland, which I still think was the greatest thing ever. My grad night was at Disneyland. My prom was at the Disneyland Hotel. And I went on to write a feature film script, which is at Disney right now, which is about Disneyland.
High school is all about coming of age. Students enter here as children and they graduate as young adults. So there's many firsts during their 4 years here. Their first experience behind the wheel, their first kiss.
My most excruciating worst first was having to make out with my girlfriend. I was so nervous about doing it wrong that I didn't want to do it.
Girls were very frightening to me, far more so it seemed then than they were to other boys, but I suspect other boys were equally frightened.
My first car was a 72 Mustang that I bought from my aunt with the money that I made from my after-school job at Hobie Sports, which I had from the time I was 14. And I earned that car, and I was so excited. And the day I got my license the day I turned 16. So I passed my driving test by 1 point, and the instructor came over to talk to my mom and said, she barely passed, you really shouldn't let her drive, she's not a very good driver. And my mom's like, yeah, okay, here, take the keys, I don't want to drive you anymore.
It's the first time a lot of students hear testimonials, and many of our Hall of Fame members, when they come back, talk about their failures here at Newport Harbor High School and how those failures really set the foundation for their future. The first big athletic loss, the first big paper that they failed, and why it meant so much to them and how it helped them succeed eventually.
That was one of the best things about this place. It was a safe place to fail, and we failed a lot.
One first I had in high school was meeting a Holocaust survivor who came to speak to us at a rally. It was a really emotional experience for me, and it really makes you realize how scary the world can be.
We've had a lot of famous people come in and either perform at our school or speak to classes, but I know that Bob Hope and Doris Day came and performed in our theater.
John Wayne, I went to high school with Aisa Wayne, and he was pretty cool. He'd come up and watch football practice, give us a couple pep talks and stuff like that. He was a great guy.
We've had a lot of different athletes that have come through and spoken.
Hakeem Jamal, he was Malcolm X's cousin, came to school to talk. Well, I had James Roosevelt come into my class, Curtis LeMay, the head of the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Ray Bradbury would come to our school, and he would start slowly weaving how you write a story.
Let's get ready to rumble!
With college athletic scholarships at stake, sports were fiercely competitive. Harbor's rival was their neighbor across the bay, the Corona Del Mar Sea Kings. Losing this football game resulted in the ASB president being tarred with molasses and feathered. The rivalry, known as the Battle of the Bay, continues to this day.
What rivalry? No, you know, that of course is huge. CDM and Newport, right? It's basically the same place. It's like our heart split in two.
Everyone just wants to win and have that glory. Even though everyone's kind of your friend from CDM, you just want to win against them.
We could have just had one game a year and that would have been fine, just played Corona.
I knew everybody over there, and so it made it even more like we'd start building up before the week before, and we'd go at it, and there's bragging rights the whole summer.
You know, the Corona Del Mar, Newport Harbor football games were always great. In those days, there might have been a fist fight here and there, but it was all clean cut and sort of all American and real down home neighborhood stuff, and just like magic.
The action was not always on the field. Battles broke out in the quad.
The food fights. Somebody would get some ammunition.
And we basically went up to this market basket up there on 17th Street. We'd go up there, a couple of buddies worked up there, and we would collect all of the spoiled vegetables and fruit.
And you get water balloons and various things. And the night before, we would stash them all around. We'd climb up on the roofs and put trash cans full of water balloons. And guys like Bill Shedd and Jeff Malinoff, guys that are very conservative, they got into it, right? So then you start to think, well, it's okay. Because if they're doing it, I can do it. And it just became unbelievable. And the teachers had absolutely no control to stop it. The senior square in this place was so centralized that it was the perfect arena for a food fight, perfect. And people couldn't escape it because you were trapped.
And we climbed up on a building with a garbage sack full of water balloons, and then we sat up there laughing for a little while before everyone came out, and we said, well, everyone's gonna see us. So we tore some of the plastic bag and put it on our heads, and then poke little holes in it. Everyone recognized us anyway and started yelling our names, and we ended up throwing water balloons, and then finally they said, okay, get on down from the roof, and we got marched over to the principal's office.
Water balloons didn't dampen the 1970 graduation ceremony, but sprinklers did. 2 students reprogrammed the field's watering system. No one ratted out the culprits, and they were never apprehended. In 1980, Harbor High turned 50 years old. The decade was dominated by Reagan's presidency and his quest for peace.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
The biggest thing I can remember as a kid probably was nuclear war. I mean, that was something that we talked about. I think back on it now, and that's a very stressful, kind of scary place to be for kids, for any of us, but especially kids in high school.
We practiced these ridiculous duck and cover drills as if getting underneath your desk was going to protect you from being vaporized by a nuclear bomb.
I remember coming home from school senior year when the Challenger went down, which was like, that was an enormous moment because of the teacher being on board. Everyone in school was so, interested in that, in that journey. That was like a huge tragedy and something that I think, a lot of people really responded to in that time period. Because again, this is in the very beginning of the Reagan era. And then when Reagan was shot was also when we were all seniors.
AIDS was a really big issue. You had such fear that you just thankfully don't have today.
Technology was on the rise with the onset of home computers. In '84, math teacher Webb Jones founded Heritage Hall, and subsequently a Hall of Fame was established to honor notable alumni.
There's only a handful of high schools across the country that have Heritage Hall or a museum on campus celebrating its rich history. For students to be able to go into Heritage Hall, walk by the Hall of Fame to see where we've come from and where we're at and where we're going is the most powerful part about Heritage Hall and our Hall of Fame.
They were inducted into the Hall of Fame for their success and for their greatness, and that just demonstrates to us current students that we can achieve greatness too.
Having something like that to celebrate all the great things and the great people that have attended, to have, pieces of that history there, that's a great idea.
It's a place where you walk in there and you say, wow, there's been a lot of amazing people that have come through here.
Looking at the different sporting teams and seeing like the 1940s baseball team and pictures like that really make me smile.
A lot of people have nostalgia for their high school and just, their college and past in general, and I have a lot of nostalgia as well, and so I think looking back is always a fun thing to do, right?
The class of '84 gifted a prominent watercolor to the school's library exhibit. It was added to the Ruth Stover Fleming collection, named in honor of Harbor High's first librarian, Ruth Stover Fleming. Over the years, the collection has become extensive. The library doubles as an art gallery, receiving national recognition. It all originated from that single painting, Snow Scene, by Thomas Hunt, donated by the class of 1935.
A lot has developed from that early time.
And we're so very fortunate to have a rich collection of art, and really is symbolic in a lot of ways of how we celebrate the arts at Newport Harbor.
We have a great music department. Whenever I'm at any type of rally or sporting event, the band is always there and making sure everyone stays excited and is there to kind of hype all the students up, and everyone gets into it, whether it's drumline performing or someone singing the national anthem.
Music speaks to everyone, and likewise, paintings can do that to some people. I mean, a great piece of sculpture, so all of that's so important.
Newport Harbor High was big enough that it was like a little city. There was something for everyone, whether you liked sports or theater or music or filmmaking. You could find others who shared your same interests.
And there really were all the cliques that you would imagine in a big public high school at that time. So there were like the Socias, and there were the Smacks, and there were all kinds of different social groups. And the other faction that was there when I was there was a huge group of punkers. And then there were new wavers, and there were so there was, that particular time period had a very specific subset of people that were really into certain things.
Plenty of students were into books. Harbor High excelled academically and was honored as a California Distinguished School for 3 consecutive years, due in part to their faculty.
Virtually every teacher I had was fabulous.
Every single department had really strong, exceptionally strong teachers in it. I mean, when I first came here, there was a man named John Williams who taught chemistry. His book was the most widely used high school chemistry book in the United States, and he was a teacher here.
Fabian Giroux, who was my art history teacher for AP Art History, really just sort of opened up the world of art to me. And I've never been the same since.
Fabian Giroux was legendary when I was in junior high school. So when you're at Ensign, you had to register for your classes, and people would talk about Mr. Giroux's world history class at Ensign.
The science was full of characters like Bob Haley, who also coached track. Bob Fry was a forest ranger and would show kids how to start fires with flint and things in class, how to survive. But I think the most meaningful teacher that I ever encountered was Bob Wentz, who was the drama teacher at the time and also taught speech.
He helped so many thousands of kids, particularly the kids that were struggling with other things, struggling with academics. They didn't like math, they didn't like English, but they liked drama.
When I came through, I was in his English class. He kept trying to get me to get into the drama program. I said, no, it's not for me. I just couldn't do it. Being a jock, and then I was shy.
Mr. Wentz gave you the self-confidence and the courage to get up and try things.
One day in class, he said, listen, here's what I want to do. Privately, he pulled me aside before class, and he said, we're going to have an argument, and I'm going to escalate it till it gets to a point where you get up and you throw your books down, slam the door, and walk out and run out of, whatever it is. So we're going to put on a thing. And then everybody else was going to have to write about what had just happened. I remember doing it, like really scaring people in the class. But he pulled me aside afterwards. He said, you have to get into drama. You have to do this.
One teacher that influenced me the most, I think, was Bill George. He was a math teacher, and he was also the basketball coach. He was like the Pied Piper. When he'd walk on campus, all the kids knew him. They'd follow him around, and he had great things to say, positive things, and I still remember his name today. So, I mean, there's a lot of things I don't remember about last year, but I remember Bill.
Sidney Davidson is the patriarch, the trailblazer of Newport Harbor High School. Sidney Davidson was the school's first principal. He served as principal for 25 years. The football stadium, the athletic stadium, bears his name, and he was actually an icon within Southern California for how he founded Newport Harbor High School and the rich traditions that he started here.
The decade began with America at war with Iraq. Operation Desert Storm, as it was called, was over in 43 days after coalition forces liberated Kuwait. In '93, Bill Clinton defeated sitting President George H.W. Bush to become America's 42nd president. Technology had a major impact on the world. Google's search engine was founded, and the Internet became available for unrestricted use. Apple revealed the iMac computer, and consumer cell phones were becoming prevalent. In '94, Newport Beach Public Library opened its doors. Harbor High scored big in the '90s. Multiple teams won CIF championships. Dramatic Arts earned numerous awards. The theater was named after Robert Wentz, who taught drama at Harbor High for 32 years. Mr. Wentz was thrilled with the tribute, and his timing was theatrical. The day after being told, he passed away. Before his final curtain call, he had seen many of his students achieve incredible success in the entertainment industry.
Live from Newport Harbor, it's the Video Yearbook!
Y2K, the dawn of a new century. In 2001, George Walker Bush became President of the United States. That same year, on September 11th, Islamic terrorists attacked America using airplanes as suicide bombs. 2,977 people were killed. Once again, America went to war with Iraq, a conflict that lasted 8 years. At the end of the decade, Barack Obama was elected president. Technology continued to advance. Cell phones and texting became commonplace. For Harbor High, it was another season of victories across the board. Fans saw a full moon at a football game when a Harbor High student streaked across Davidson Field at halftime. In 2004, the culinary arts team had all the right ingredients. They took first place in the California statewide culinary competition and captured the title again 5 years later. The sailing team won the national championship in 2009. In '04, Tommy Tar, the school mascot, a loose representation of Popeye the Sailor Man, was memorialized with his own statue on campus. Tommy's appearance has evolved over the years. His spirit and optimistic character has endured. In 2007, authorities determined that Robbins Hall, Heritage Hall, the Lotz Performing Arts Center, along with the tower, had to be destroyed, as the buildings did not meet earthquake safety requirements.
A lot of people questioned
why we have to demolish the tower, demolish the building.
Even back in the 1960s, everybody said the tower and the auditorium were not earthquake-proof. We even made student films that joked about the auditorium being about to fall down on us at any moment. But we still used it.
The tower survived many earthquakes. Of course, the 1933 Long Beach quake, the Loma Prieta quake in 1989, and the Northridge quake in 1994.
Everybody just knew that if the tower came down, it would be gone forever.
When I first heard that they were talking about knocking down the tower, of course, all of us were, oh no.
That's just criminal. I mean, it's such a landmark and was so unique for a high school.
The tower had become a symbol of hope and resilience. It was a metaphor for many of us, a survivor, standing tall.
Our rivals across the bay over at CDM, I'm sure they were just having so much fun just watching us having to mourn over losing this tower.
They beat the heck out of it. They had the wrecking ball. They could never knock it down. They just wanted to stand up and stay there.
It resisted the wreckers. They hit it again and again, but it refused to go down. But eventually, it was the end of an icon.
The community definitely rallied to save this icon. And if it meant rebuilding it, it meant replacing it exactly the way it was.
It could never be the same.
Within a year, construction was underway. The updated buildings and new tower were finished in 2009.
Nobody expected it to be built back correctly. But then, we were all very pleasantly surprised.
Seeing the tower stand today, it definitely looks bigger, it's bold, it's bright. There are a lot of things that were incorporated into the new building. The WPA mosaics that were in the inner quad before, and now they are in the interior hallways. The compass rose was reinstalled, and it now points due north. It wasn't before.
In 2016, Donald Trump became the 45th President of the United States. Harbor High began an international baccalaureate program. The Harbor High senior who was deprived of his graduation in 1942 because he'd been sent away to an internment camp was asked to march to a different drummer 72 years later. A wrong was finally made right for our World War II hero, Dr. Don Miata.
I was telling his story to our faculty, and Mrs. Julie Ward, one of our French teachers, mentioned to all of us that why don't we have him walk? And so the faculty overwhelmingly applauded that decision.
It was their feeling that I would be very welcome to walk with them.
It was covered globally. We had phone calls from the London Times. He was inducted into our Hall of Fame that morning, and that afternoon he walked across the stage and then afterwards presented us with the Congressional Gold Medals. And it was very difficult for the Hall of Fame committee to get a lot of information out of him because he was so humble, specifically about his service record.
Being an inductee of Hall of Fame at Newport Harbor High School was a real privilege and an honor that I feel I really don't deserve, but anyway, they gave it to me, so I accepted it.
In 2020, Harbor High turned 90 years old. The student population was 2,400, a 1,200% growth from the day the school opened in 1930. In early 2020, The coronavirus caused a global pandemic and crippled life all over the world. Classes were held online.
Being a senior in the pandemic has been personally, and I would say for a lot of my peers, very difficult.
There's definitely some times when it's really sad to be a senior because you're not able to experience Battle of the Bay and have the normal senior year that you would want.
Being in person was important. Was for mental health. I think morale has been really low among my peers, and it's been hard to stay motivated when you don't have that connection, obviously. Seeing people over Zoom, it's just not the same.
We seniors didn't get a homecoming this year, and we're hoping that we're gonna get a prom.
The school has survived a depression, a world war, Korea, Vietnam, civil social unrest. But this is the first pandemic that the school has gone through. It's been a setback, but I know that the heartbeat will continue.
Within a year, a coronavirus vaccine was developed, and in-person classes 2 days a week were optional. Masks were mandatory. In 2021, Joe Biden was sworn in as America's president. In early spring, a drive-through prom was planned, but it came to a dead end. Harbor High's class of 21 is poised to have a belated traditional prom. Students are ready to kick up their heels, take the lessons they've learned, and move forward.
The most important lesson I've learned at Newport Harbor High School is said by Dr. Bolton a lot. He says, "A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor." And I think it's very applicable to this past year. Next year, I will be attending the University of Tennessee, so go Vols. But I will always have the biggest love for Newport Harbor and my community in Newport Beach.
You grow a lot in high school, so it's very bittersweet to have an end to such a pivotal part of your life. Looking back, I will always remember being a sailor.
Newport Harbor High School has that well-rounded student body.
Today, there are Harbor High students descended from Native Americans, South Sea Islanders, Filipinos, African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, and more. And every day, the students themselves bring to campus over 14 languages.
Getting to learn about the different backgrounds that students come from, and it makes group projects and clubs and getting to meet new people that much more interesting.
Dreams can be realized. Hopefully, it continues to be just that, an incubator for good minds, for good lives, good families.
It's a very nice school. I think you appreciate a lot of things that you didn't appreciate at the time.
My hopes for the school is that San Andreas stays quiet for another 100 years or so, and that this old girl can stand up through the test of time.
Through it all, there was the tower. It was there in the Great Depression. It was there in the global pandemic. A symbol of strength, resilience, and renewal.
Wow, that was so fun. I feel like I just got a really fun history lesson.
That's right. It was so cool to experience the span of history that Harbor has gone through. The school itself has lived through multiple presidents, wars, eras. She's like our great grandmother who's seen it all.
Let's see. I'm going to give some shout outs from our audience to see what they thought of the movie. David Eccles says he's gotten out all of his yearbooks from 1967 to 1970. Apparently, the 1978 Italians, the Battettis, Roulettis, and Finsettis are watching. Griff Ames from 1971 remembered the food fights really positively. He was also the sophomore class president, and he said they used to climb up the tower to ring the bell, and there was like a lot of pigeons up there. Steve Armand from the class of 1970 remembers Bob Haley really fondly. Raleigh Pulaski from the class of 1953 is out there watching. We have a whole family, Vicki Brown, Lori, Julie Brown, and David Simmons, all from the 70s watching together. There's also six grads from 75 and 76 having a girls' week and enjoying our film tonight. Evie Taylor Johnson from the class of 56 is watching. Tim Carmen from 81, his class has just had a ton of family members graduate from Harbor. His mom, his aunt, his cousins, all different kinds of years. He also said that watching that tower come down really hurt. Tracy Dalton from the class of 86 remembers Mr. Eulander really fondly. Ross Vincetti from the class of 78, he remembers the car rallies personally, and also Mr. England, who was in charge of the band at that time. Multiple people recognized Matt Marshall's band playing in the quad there, so apparently that was a good, fun picture to see. Kathy wanted to remember John Johnson, who was a biology teacher that she thought was really excellent. Trip Montgomery says hello from the class of 1995. Michael Lawler remembers when Honk played in the Harbor Football Stadium in the summer of 1973. I bet that would have been a really good show to see. I wasn't born yet, but I bet it was awesome. Monica McDade was excited to see the food fights, although she swears she never personally participated in one, although I'm not sure that we can believe her on that. Desiree Brown from the class of 1982 remembers when the sprinklers went on in her graduation. And Kimberly Perry remembers Scott Dukes as an awesome teacher. And, lots of people really enjoyed hearing the story of Dr. Don Miata. And he's a wonderful person. I've had the opportunity to meet him, and it's wonderful to see him speak and talk. Okay. So keep putting your questions and your shout outs in the comments. We love to hear what you have to say. Thanks to everyone who has already made a donation.
We really appreciate it.
We really appreciate it. If you haven't had a chance to donate and you have a few dollars to share with our scholarship program, the link is there in the chat, or you can go to newportharboralumni.org and hit that red donate button. We're so close to reaching one of our fundraising goals. Last fall in October, we had another online movie discussion with the film 5 Summer Stories. And there we raised about over $10,000 for our scholarships. We're hoping to beat that tonight. So if you have something to give, that would be awesome. And we're truly grateful for every donation. It really makes a difference.
Now let's begin our Q&A. If you haven't yet, please drop your questions in the comments at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll get started.
So please welcome to the stage Mr. Joe Robinson, Dr. Sean Bolton, and Mr. Bob Rogers.
All right, welcome everybody. Hey, Mr. Robinson, great to see you.
Oh, thank you. Good to see you.
So full disclosure, Mr. Robinson is my dad, so we're here to Zoom together.
I asked you, I have to be next to somebody so photogenic.
Well, Mr. Robinson, I had you freshman year for world history. This first question is for you. What makes Newport Harbor High School such a special place?
Isn't it always the people? Any organization, any institution, it's always the people involved. Of course, we've had wonderful students. I've never met a student yet that I didn't absolutely love. And so that was great. But the faculty has been amazing since I first got there. My first day at Newport Harbor High School, I walked in the front office, scared to death, shaking. And this little guy walks up to me named Bob Wentz and said, "Hi, welcome to Harbor High School." And he talked to me for about 5 minutes and he walked away. And I said, "I want to be like him someday." He was so amazing. You could tell in the first 5 minutes. And I was greeted by all the amazing faculty there. Fabian Giroux invited us to dinner almost immediately. My wife and I were invited, and Don Eulander and Margot and Betty Orbach and Bob Fry and Webb Jones and these amazing teachers. And I came in with a group of new teachers, Denny O'Hearn and Jerry Tagami and John McGinnis, and just a bunch of eager young guys. And we all wondered, could we ever be as good as those old masters? And those guys they were great teachers, and we miss them all. It is the people. It's always the people, isn't it?
And yourself included, I think they would even agree. You definitely lived up to being one of the masters.
If that means old, yeah. I figured out recently that out of what 110 teachers on campus, there's probably 6 that were born before I started teaching. The majority were born after I started teaching at Harvard.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so Mr. Rogers, I've got a question for you. What makes high school such an important and formative time in people's lives?
Gosh, I think Dr. Bolton already answered that question. There's so many firsts, so many things that are permanently forming your notions of who you are, who you want to be, who you could be, et cetera, et cetera. And 2 of the teachers that were in the show here tonight really stand out in that way, in totally opposite ways. Bill Barnett was really, really hard on people because he set this standard of absolute excellence, and he tolerated nothing less. And as a result, he had some really rough edges. But my word, he absolutely, you had to toe the line, or you were going to catch his wrath. And some people didn't like that. Some people thought that it should be, trophies for participation, and everybody's sports achievements are beautiful. And no, he wasn't that way at all. It was very hard on people. And in the complete opposite direction, Bob Wentz just figured out how to find the best in everybody and see the best in everybody he met, and to help them see the best in themselves and bring them out. The people, and I think McGillivray said it very well. He said that Bob Wentz did it very well for people who sometimes were not doing as well, but just Bob Wentz saw and brought out the best in everybody. 2 complete opposite teachers, and in that regard, and that kind of range, with again a focus on achievement and excellence in both cases, bringing out the best. It really made that school a very special place.
That's great. So this is I really think that you really nailed it on the head there, talking about how Harbor is such a special place.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Principal Bolton, what role do you see the high school playing now in our greater community?
Well, first, I just want to thank everybody for putting together today and this documentary. It's been absolutely fantastic watching and reliving a lot of what Harbor High is all about. It still plays the same role. It's opened its doors to a diverse group of students for 90 years in the Newport Mesa community. And it welcomes everybody, educates everybody. And at the end of 4 years, our one goal is to make sure that students have both feet on the ground, have a head on their shoulders, and they know where they want to go, whether it's college, career, or military. And we champion all paths, we champion all backgrounds, and we try and meet students where they're at and really push them to be their best selves every day, whether it's in the classroom or on stage or on the athletic field. And it's a magical place. It's a privilege to be the principal there. I absolutely love my job, and I love the community. And just finally, my own kids are going to go there next year, so I can't wait for that to happen, and they'll be graduates in 2020.
Oh, that's pretty great, Sean. We got, I think you got muted at the very end there, but how incredible that you get to now see your own kids going to Harbor. That's got to be pretty exciting.
Obviously I'm sitting here next to my dad. I think that's one of the really special things about a school that has 90 years of history is that there's generations, there's families of generations that are connected to the school in some way. In the film, you saw Tony Horvath and his daughter Shay, and he is a third generation of his family that graduated from Harbor. And so his daughter is a fourth generation graduate from Newport Harbor High School. And so, that they're not the only family like that has just generation after generation after generation that's connected to the school in some way. So I think that's another part of everything that's really special about a school that's been around for 90 years. And now for all of our panelists, what are some of your favorite memories from Newport Harbor High School? We also love to hear from the audience in the comments. What are your favorite traditions or memories of your Harbor days? Bob, could start with you.
Oh, gosh. So many things. I think one of the things that I was, again, on this theme of sometimes the teachers that are hardest on you are the ones that do you the most good. I never would have gotten into the college that I got to attend if Barnett hadn't been that water polo coach. At the same time, while I was at Newport, I got A's and B's in every single subject, all the way through, except for my two worst grades, which were typing and creative writing from Mr. Eulander, who was really, really hard on me and gave me the only C in a major subject that I got. And I was really upset at that. But something, to this day, typing and creative writing are the only two things from Newport Harbor High School that I do every single day. So sometimes it's the teachers that are hard on you that do you the most good. So that's kind of an amusing memory. It's also just what you said. It's the friends. We still see and visit with people that we went to Newport with. I know that somewhere out there, Marshall Harvey is watching, because I saw a couple of comments from him along the way. Larry Wright, Tony LaBianca. These are people that I'm still in touch with to this day. My wife of 47 years is also Newport class of 68. And some of her friends, Susie and Lynn and Leanne, I know, are watching. So it's kind of a family that you take with you afterwards.
Well, Bob, Carol Schwartz in the comments says, not to feel bad, that Mr. Eulander said that Hemingway was a hack. So you're at least in good company.
Well, I think he was probably right. My writing didn't have the rigor and the clear thinking that it needed, and he was absolutely right. And what Dr. Bolton talked about, sometimes your failures are what kind of drive you, and that was an example of that.
Marshall Harvey says that you and he were in the senior play together in 1968. So that's one of his fond memories of Harbor times. And speaking of plays, Heather in the comments said one of her fond memories is doing plays with Gail Brower Nedler. She was my drama teacher while I was there. So shout out to her and the wonderful times we had in the theater. So Dad, what are some of your funnest memories of traditions at Harbor?
Way too many to count, but okay. Number one, I was asked to teach the AP European history class for the very first time, and both my children, Sarah and her brother Gary, signed up for the class, which was terrifying. And I went, "What are you doing?" And which made the whole class call me Dad. But it was so much fun, and it just, I bonded with my children even more than I had felt before. And Gary went on, of course, to come back and teach at Harbor High School. Sarah's brother is a teacher there and teaches AP Euro much better than I ever taught it. So those are really fun moments, and along with millions of others from all the people that are writing in. And I remember you people, and I love you so much, and I can't quit because of you.
Brent Taylor says one of his fond memories is the Latin Club toga parties. I remember being a teeny tiny kid, and I had my own tiny toga. And we used to have a chariot in our garage back in the day. So that's the old school Latin Club memories. Sean, what are some of your favorite traditions at Harbor, maybe more recently, or things that have carried through the years?
More recently, it has to be the Hall of Fame ceremonies. And just you listen to the inductee speeches and you realize why you're there. You realize that day in and day out, when you toil in those difficult days, especially through November, December, January, and February, that's the heart of the school year. And it can be very difficult as an educator because you physically and psychologically get really tired. But the Hall of Fame speeches, to me, have been absolutely fantastic. The rallies, the drama performances, the music performances, choir and dance. But, I also have to echo what Mr. Rogers talked about, just the people. They become family. And everybody from Mr. Joe Robinson here to you, Sarah, to people in the Alumni Association, to the students, to the faculty, they just become your family. And, we're not perfect. We'll never be perfect. We're just as dysfunctional as the next family, but we love one another and we love our school. And it just gets us through the ups and downs and the twists and turns of the school year. And that's what I love the most about it. And I thought Fabian Giroux's quote at the beginning of the film about, people have their time there, but the institution endures. It does. We will all be replaced, and there will be more and more alum out there over the years, and they will leave their mark on the institution, but it will continue to endure because I feel like the tradition and the foundation has been set, and it's a strong one. And that's why it's a great school.
Awesome. Peggy McCowan from the class of 1968. So Bob, your class, she's giving a cheers to all of her fellow cheerleaders over the years. She says that little did she know how much of a lifetime skill set that experience offered. Many fond memories of long practice sessions and exhilarating Friday night football games. So yes, thanks to the cheerleaders and the band that makes those, the football games and the big basketball games so much fun. I have a lot of fond memories of cheering along as the band plays. Krista Wygand is saying she's honored to be married into the NHS family. Her father-in-law graduated in the 70s, and her husband graduated in my class, 1997. And her kids will be there in 2029 to 2033. So a class of 33 coming up. Here's a favorite memory from Joy. When the Beacon staff put their desks and the flag out in the middle of the street, when they sang The Duke of Earl with Stephanie Kapansky using the blinds as instruments and others using the desks as drums. That sounds like a lot of fun. Leslie Brockman says, kudos to the fabulous music drama department of the early 60s, Bob Wentz and Marie Heapsch. She was one of the first choir and musical directors, and just a wonderful lady. There's a lot of people saying hi to you, Dad, and remembering your Latin classes. And was it Roman History Fridays?
Yes, it was.
Roman History Fridays. And you were actually a graduation speaker in 1985, and Pauline Palm was remembering your theme was, look at me now and what can I do? And I actually was a small child and I got to come and see that. And I have strong memories of that graduation speech as well.
Hi, Pauline.
And the donkey basketball, that was not something I ever experienced. Bob, did you ever see any donkey basketball when you were at Harbor, or is that after your time?
I think it was during my time, but I missed it.
Okay. That seems so hilarious. Did you actually ride a donkey?
I did, and fell off. Yeah, the whole thing.
That seems like that would definitely be a thing. Sean, Jeff Patetti is requesting that we show that picture of your high school photo again. That sounds pretty awesome. Bruce Charles says that he just got engaged yesterday to his classmate and prom date. Diana Billings. That's congratulations, you two, more Harbor connections. I mean, I think one of my favorite Harbor traditions is the Battle of the Bay, because it crosses all sports, all kinds of competitions. I remember Joe Corbro was talking about a math decathlon, and they were so disappointed when they lost out to CDM. That was like the extra wound in the state championship. So I think that is a really fun time as well. Says Les Van Dyke, who's now passed away. He was a wonderful choir director, and Georgianne has fond memories of singing in the Chantels and the a cappella choir. And again, Rich, Mr. England, he ran the marching band, like a military marching band. I think he was the director when they marched in the Rose Parade. Right, so that's a big accomplishment. Some school, Andrea saying yay for the school ski trips back in the day. And Monica's wondering how the Bob's Big Boy statue got on top of the boys' gym. I'm not sure that we have the inside scoop, but
nobody ever figured that one out.
If anyone knows, send us an email. We'd love to hear. I also heard I got a shout out for Mr. Bob House, a wonderful biology teacher who really inspired so many people. And also from a younger student, and he's a current teacher, Oscar Costanza. He graduated from Harvard too, right?
He did.
He did. So he's someone who graduated and is now a current teacher, just like my brother.
So we brought it up before, but there are so many teachers that people are so inspired by. In the film, we heard about Bill Barnett, Bob Wentz. Really, there are so many, and I bet we all have our favorites. Mine is Madame Woodard, who taught me French for 4 years. Bonjour, Madame Woodard. Tu me manques. We'd love to hear from some of the audience more of their favorite teachers. And Mr. Rogers, if you have any other teachers that stood out to you.
I'll fill in with two more. Mr. O'Hearn. Mr. O'Hearn kind of, Fabian Giroux scared some people. He scared the hell out of me. I was delighted when I did not wind up in his class, and wound up very luckily in Mr. O'Hearn's class instead, because the difference was, I think Mr. O'Hearn loved history and made you feel his love. He sort of brought you along with him. And I have been interested in history ever since. And that's a real gift in teaching. Another one that I just was in awe of, my Spanish teacher, Mr. Caldwell, who just totally ignored the approved curriculum and said, you're going to learn 2 sentences a day, frontwards and backwards, and be responsible for those 2 sentences a day for the rest of the year. And so 2 sentences a day, says he put it, any fool can learn 2 sentences a day. Well, by the end of the first week, you had 10 you were responsible for, and you can see what's going to happen. And when time came around for the Ensenada race, even though I was underage, I knew how to order 2 beers in Mexico.
Very, very important life skills.
But still, just emphasizing the fundamentals. Get the fundamentals right. It's
all about sentences.
Steve Armand in the comments says he remembers fondly being chased around by Jack King, who I think was a vice principal.
He was, and he was in charge of attendance, among other things.
Yes, in charge of attendance, and he's sort of fondly known as Bring Him Back Jack. I just heard this story. I did not experience this myself. That back in the day when the surf report was really good, and some people were missing from the first period, he'd go down to the beach, down to the wedge, and stand there on the beach. And as people rode the waves in, he'd be like, "You back to class." So I think that's a very fun memory. So Joy's remembering Mr. Eulander bringing celebrities to school, like Ray Bradbury. and Stacy Keach. Yeah, again, Ray Bradbury, and Carol's remembering also Jose Feliciano came before anyone knew who he was. Someone also saying Mr. Burgess' science classes were so much fun. And who remembers hiking the back bay looking for bugs from Mr. Barnett's biology class? I had a Mr. Haley, but I remember those bug collections. I don't think they do those anymore.
No, we ran out of bugs.
The kids got them all. Yes. So Sean, are there any teachers that stand out in your memory?
There's so many. I mean, one sitting right next to you, Mr. Joe Robinson. Just we have faculty meetings, and we always think sometimes we're cutting edge and we have the newest and greatest idea in front of us. And Joe will remind us that in 1976 we tried this and it didn't work. It takes the air out of the balloon, but and Joe, as you've mentioned, right? What education is like a pendulum; it just swings back and forth. But there's so many. I mean, Mr. O'Hearn in the documentary mentioned that just every department has such high-powered teachers, and collectively they work so well as a team. And again, I think the fierce competition within departments and between departments also fuels the fire and the passion to be a better school. And sometimes, we don't get along, we don't see eye to eye, we have heated discussions and flat out arguments, to be quite honest, in our leadership team meetings. But that's how you grow as an organization. You don't want yes people around you. You want people that will speak the truth very clearly and intelligently. And I feel like we have that staff. The one teacher that I think stands out in my mind for in the Hall of Fame is Ruth Stover. I mean, she started the library art collection. She was a school librarian. A lot of people remember her very, very fondly. And I think her name is, and then another English teacher that a lot of alums talk about is Rostine Feely, who was just a high-powered English teacher back in the day. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention two quick things. One is that, Shelley Spurgeon and Sue Lindsay are on here, class of 67. And, you talk about the magic of Harbor, and I've got a picture of the tower with a rainbow over it. The class of 67 has taken care of a couple of homeless students over the last few years and just chipping in and getting a lot of food cards and just gift cards and anything, clothing, anything and everything that a student needs when they're down and out. And they also donated a golf cart to the school. And the second thing is that on Wednesday night at Newport Harbor, the day before graduation, our girls basketball team is in the first CIF final that it's ever been in. And so last night we won our semifinal game, and Wednesday we play in the finals of CIF on Wednesday at Harbor. And it's just a great way to round out a school year. The next day's graduation, the 90th graduating class. Imagine that.
That's so awesome. We're also getting some shout outs for Betty Orbach, another wonderful teacher. Margot Cunningham was Andrea's freshman English teacher, and she wore the coolest floor-length beaded fringe vest. I had Mrs. Cunningham when I was for my freshman English class, and she was still a very snazzy dresser. Mr. Giroux and Mr. Ulelander shaped so many people's appreciation of culture and history. Yay, of course, for Sue and Shelley. There was a shout out from Mr. Marino in there. Also, Mr. Ballone's science classes. People really appreciated those classes as well. And Mr. McDonald, apparently his Scottish accent was infectious.
Yeah, it very much was. Yeah, it's Donald.
Mr. McDonald. Okay.
Sarah, one of the great things about Rick's film that we haven't talked about is how most of us go to Harbor and we kind of accept everything at face value. I mean, when I was going there, Davidson was a field, not a person. Dodge was a car. Beak was the guy from the ferry, I guess. But it's great to kind of, I was astonished at some of the history of my high school that I didn't know. not only from before I was there, but also some of the things that happened after I was there. And I think we all owe a great thanks to Rick and to the Newport Harbor High School Alumni Association for causing this labor of love to happen. It's gonna, it's a real eye opener. I learned a lot from the film, and thank you, Rick, and everybody who helped make that happen.
I agree, Rick. That was phenomenal. You had me tearing up the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, for me, seeing the footage of Bill Barnett, and we're so lucky that we were able to interview him before he passed, and the way that he expressed how meaningful it is to him when students come to talk to him. Like, he was sort of speaking for all teachers, all educators, all staff and faculty and principals. He was speaking for the meaning, what it means, as an educator when people tell you how you've changed their lives. So that's a very special thing. I get it. A memory of Bob Fry, one of a kind English teacher. This is the second person who mentioned, we can't forget the school counselors, Mr. Milt Herring, and Jeanette Johnson.
Jeanette Johnson was mentioned, and
yeah.
Bob Hayes and Bill Straw.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of school counselors can really have an impact on people's lives. I know. Sorry, go ahead, Bob.
As we think back to all of these wonderful teachers, and we think of the growing and building foundation that each of them has contributed something to build up this school, it makes all of us think what we can do to, in our own way, contribute back to the continued growth and strengthening of the school. And that goes back to your shameless shilling earlier tonight of the of contributions to the Alumni Association. And I hope somebody will talk about the look on the kids' faces as they received their scholarships, and the good that those contributions make. It's really a great feeling that you're not just done with Harbor High, you're now giving back. It's not paying it forward, you're paying it backward and paying it forward at the same time. It's very satisfying and just wonderful to see the look on those faces.
Yeah, and one of the things, to speak on behalf of the Alumni Association that we think is special about, the scholarships that we give is that we offer 2 years of support, and we prioritize students who are going to a community college or a trade or nursing or technical program. So we hope to get them all the way through their community college experience. And we've heard from the students who we've supported. They said, by being able to have this scholarship, I didn't have to worry about paying my tuition. I could just focus on school, and my job could help pay for my living expenses. And so it really makes a big difference. Counselor Bill Straw helped Michael Lawler out there as well. So that's a really good point, Bob. I know when our lovely Monica gets to call our scholarship recipients and tell them they won, it's one of her favorite things. It brings tears to her eyes. She's just saying in the comments how amazing it is when she gets to talk to them and tell them about their awards. For some of these students, they've never won an award like this before, and it's really inspiring and gives her goosebumps.
Well, also, you change a life.
Yeah.
Somebody that might or might not be able to afford to go to college all of a sudden is going. That's just an amazing thing to be able to do.
Yeah. Brandon Grimes, who you saw featured talking about the tower, he represented us in giving out the awards. It's senior awards night. And he said it was really inspiring to see these class of 2021 students. So talking about the students, Dad, you've taught teenagers from the 1960s. So you taught for 2 years at Ensign, and then you moved to Harbor in 1969. And
right after Bob graduated.
Yeah, and you're still teaching in the classroom today. How have teenagers changed over those years, and how have they stayed the same?
Well, the sameness is they're still teenagers. They're still going through the same anxieties. They're not sure who they are. They're wondering what they're going to become. They're not sure if they're accepted or not. All of the things that we all went through as adolescents, more or less, and they're all dealing with that. And it's so touching to be with these kids and to just want to pat them on the head and say, you're going to be just fine. Relax. Even if you're not cool now, you'll be cool someday. It's okay, and I love that about them. But are they different? Yes. As somebody said, in the 60s, we were party animals. We knew how to party, and that is definitely true. When I got to Harbor, there were a lot of party animal students and really fun kids, of course. But they raised hell at graduation. They did food fights. You really would not see that on campus today. It just, when I tell kids that those things happen, they go, "That's impossible." Our kids are, I hate to say it, but the kids today are way more motivated and way just more polite in a lot of ways. But they're still kids. They're still teenagers. So, there's always that. But I love them all. And that never changes.
That's so great to hear that they're even more motivated today. Kind of surprising a little bit, honestly, but very reassuring to hear that.
Good to hear. Our country can use it.
So here's a question for you all. You can't cover 90 years in under an hour in a film. So what's something about Newport Harbor that was left out of the movie that you'd like to see in the next sequel?
That's a great question, Riley. And I just go back to the fact that there has been so much in the past 90 years at our school. It's hard to capture in a documentary. I mean, you would have to make a 12-part miniseries really to capture every piece of every decade. And you could even split the decade up in 5-year increments and still not capture everything. It's incredible what's happened at the school. One highlight that probably needs to, I don't know if there's going to be a sequel or not. I mean, Rick might scream no here, but it's just how much the staff, the community has supported the school and how they've supported the school. It's truly incredible. It's that old cliche, it takes a village to raise a child. I believe that spirit and that ethos is alive and well at our school and in our community. It's just incredible how everybody from the staff to the educational community supports every kid. And even the students that struggle, that are down and out, people don't give up on them. And we see that every day at our school.
Yeah, that's so incredible. And even people in the comments right now are saying they'd love to see a one-on-one with more of the teachers to hear more details on what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I would sort of a little different take. We started out this session with a sort of an argument about a friendly argument about which was the best decade, which was the best class. And the one that I look forward to the most are the classes of the next 10 years. In every age, people who are about, the golden age is whenever the people who are currently in their 50s and 60s, when they were teenagers and early 20s. That's always, for any given generation, the golden age. And it'll be interesting to see what the kids who are going to Harbor today and over the next 10 years. It'd be great to be able to see how they look back on it from 2050 and 2060, and that it's about the future. That's what I think would be really interesting to see.
I agree with you, Bob, and I'd like to add that there's something magical that has happened to the Newport Harbor recently that maybe in the sequel could be mentioned more, and that's the diversity. We are now a diverse campus. We used to be kind of a bubble of just certain kinds of kids, but now there's so much diversity, and we have a good population of Latino kids and other minorities, but these Latino kids have made our school a better school. They're good athletes. They're great students. They're in all the advanced classes. They are just churning it up, and they are going to be the leaders of the next generation. And they've embraced the Harbor love of learning, and they're using it, and they appreciate it. I was looking at the list of the the scholarship recipients, and I know some of them, and I can tell you that when they go to college, they will be the first person in their family to ever go to college. And that's thanks to you, thanks to the Alumni Association, and thanks to Harbor High School for being such a great place for those kids. They brought so much to us, and I hope we give something back to them.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah, it's incredible to look forward like that and see even more opportunities that the Alumni Association and even anyone else given forward can help make happen. On that note, Principal Bolton, what's next for the school? What are your hopes for the future?
To continue the traditions, and thank you, Joe and Bob, for hitting upon the diversity of the school, is to continue to embrace the diversity. This decade is going to be very defining. We are once again at a crossroads in this country, politically, socially, and racially. We're divided in many ways, and our staff does a great job of embracing, again, all walks of life and trying to get groups of students, different groups of students together to see eye to eye and to find common ground. And I really believe that that's going to be the great challenge of the next decade, is we find ourselves once again at this crossroads. I believe we've got the staff to do it. I think we've got the community to do it. And at the same time, it's very exciting to think about that is our challenge, and we embrace it.
That is a really great place, I think, to come to an end of our conversation here today to end on. Thank you so much, Dad, Sean, and Bob, for joining us today. Thanks also to Rick Shadalon, Ron Brahey, Alan Gaddis, the Alumni Board, and all of our volunteers for helping make tonight and every day possible. If you'd like to get involved, sign up on our website, newportharboralumni.org, and we'll be in touch. Also, thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. It's been so great reading your comments and hearing your memories, and we really appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us.
And in case you haven't yet, please give a shout out to us on social media so your friends and family can join the fun next time and hear about all the great things we have coming from the Alumni Foundation.
Thank you for joining us tonight and contributing towards our scholarship program. I just checked that donation amount and we have hit $11,000. So we beat our goal, which was to beat it out last time. Thank you for helping us reach that fundraising goal. If you want to help, you can still donate at newportharboralumni.org. Hit the red donate button or the link in the chat. We're truly grateful for every gift. So thank you all so much.
Make sure you go to the website right now, newportharboralumni.org, to grab those honk tickets before anybody else does. You can get the best seats in the house. Check your inbox this week for an update about our upcoming homecoming birthday bash. And we'll see you in October. As always, go Sailors.
Go Sailors!
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here.